Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Slava Heroyam podcast. I'm Travis Hightower. And sorry for being a little bit late. It's about 8 past the hour, 7 p.m. Central on the 2nd of August, 2025, the year of our Lord. We are going to do a show today that is mostly to do with the MiG-31 and the no-fly zones. There are some graphics I want to bring up later to help with that. So I hope that doesn't pause the podcast for too long. But we'll start with our usual three main topics, the first being the hero of the week. Hero of the week this week is a Ukrainian sniper known only as Charcoal. Charcoal is a lady sniper. She first appeared on a Facebook post by the 35th Marine Brigade back in 2022 in April when the war first started. She had some words from her unit, the 35th Brigade, for the invaders. She called them, the first time I heard the Russians called orcs, which is an appropriate label because orcs are fallen elves who are so corrupted they can never be redeemed. So she considered these people so fallen that were invading her country that they should ultimately all be destroyed. Really harsh and something that you don't want to have a mentality on in peacetime, but when they are killing your brothers and sisters and family members and bombing them with drones and hunting them in a human safari, I imagine you can very quickly start to feel that way. If they don't treat you as human, you don't treat them as human as well. But she's a warrior, and I wanted to bring up female warriors for a reason this week. Politically in the United States, we've had an event that didn't come right out and say the unspoken, but that women need to be able to keep up with the men was the basic message. And I would say that despite needing to do however many push-ups and sit-ups in 1.5 mile run, women in combat have been proven over and over and over again and are still being proven in Ukraine. So Charcoal is our introduction. In fact, she was propped up as a next Lady Death, which would have been a big title. To read more about that, there was a Soviet sniper from Ukraine who amounted to 309 kills during World War II. Now, it was a little bit premature, probably to label Charcoal as Lady Death. But the Western media started to do that because they immediately drew the correlation of what could be possible, even though they didn't have much information to work with. All we know is that Charcoal was from the 35th Marine. So here's the 35th Marine Brigade. They wear aquamarine berets. They are comprised of 2 battalions, the 88th and 137th. You have the 1st Marine and the 2nd Marine battalion that are linear with them. They have these other companies. You have a tank battalion, a recon company, which would include a sniper company, anti-aircraft battalions. So all told, about 2,000 soldiers, and she was one of their snipers. In fact, looks like you have a picture of some snipers training here. So that would be part of their scout brigade. And here you see they have other lady warriors one is about to get her beret here as well. So they have a lot of female fighters. I would imagine this is another scout or sniper. There's a fascinating documentary about Ukrainian female snipers that came out before the war started. It's in my Substack on this week's Hero of the Week. You can link to it from there. That follows a sniper named Yulia. Now, Charcoal we were told from the 35th Marine that she wanted to join up in 2017 because of her brother and wanted to make him proud. So she fought in the anti-terror operation starting in 2017, a conflict that really kicked off in 2014. What you have to understand about that original anti-terror operation is that a lot of the folks in Donetsk and Luhansk regions thought that the Euromaidan revolution was actually a coup. So you had misinformation going back and forth, and they already were very distrustful of the government, and they were rightly distrustful, along with all Ukrainians. But when When the corrupt pro-Russian government was deposed and driven out, because they were kind of worried about their language preservation, they thought it was a coup against them. So imagine the state of Texas in Austin, and instead of January 6th happening in Washington, D.C., it happens in Austin. And the Capitol is seized, and the whole state of Texas is in lockdown. And so then the American federal military has to come in and do something about it. And it's a time of turmoil. And when the military comes, that makes more people distrust what's happening. In 2014, the two governments of Donetsk and Luhansk, they declare their own independence from Ukraine. And this is very important. They want their own separate state. Luhansk and Donetsk together are larger than some European nations. They're larger than Sweden. They're larger than Austria. So we're talking about lots of territory that Putin wants. And Putin doesn't like it that they declare just their independence. But he does go in and he sends mercenary support secretly. And this is where you have Prigozhin's forces helping to spread conflict wherever possible. I won't get into the whole history of those wars. There's ceasefires and ceasefires that are broken. They go back and forth. But in 2017, Charkol would have been fighting in the Donetsk region. And just when she was about to be able to retire from the forces, the full-scale invasion began. Now, by the time of the full-scale invasion, Putin had sowed enough propaganda that more and more people went from wanting their independent nation to wanting to join Russia. And what happened is that the Ukrainians who didn't want any part of this conflict left. They left Donetsk, they left Luhansk, and they all moved west, to the point where mostly Russian speakers were now what was left. They're still Ukrainian, but they are the ones that feel a little bit closer to Russia. So it's not that complicated. But when Putin invades, this sentiment that you have where Donetsk and Luhansk are going to be their own independent country is kind of shattered. And so a lot of the folks, unless they are... now, you've seen in our own country how a person can go from being totally against military occupation from the National Guard or the president ordering the National Guard around to invade cities to kind of thinking it's okay. And from 2014 to 2021, you had the slow progress of people thinking we need to be our own independent nation. The ones who understood that it was a lie, that it was a coup in 2014, all left. So the country was divided. And then more and more people were convinced that it might be okay to join Russia. Well, the full-scale invasion shattered a lot of that illusion for people, like the failure to release the Epstein files is shattering illusions for a lot of people here. But at this point, a lot of things have been so entrenched that Ukraine is trying to reunify through conflict, but it's difficult to do that with a stagnant front line. So you have now is Charkol's story. Let's switch to this tab. Would have gone from the front lines of Donetsk to eventually liberating Kherson. If you have not seen Kherson Human Safari, there's a great section of that documentary on how Kherson was liberated. Charkol would have been a part of that. And now they operate out of this town, which is a little bit west of Kherson, called Mykolaiv. There's Kherson. Here's home base. Near Kherson, you also have the 34th Marine. They're the ones that rescue people when the Dnipro River floods. But the 35th Marine, who also has anti-drone warfare, and the 34th Marine work this area together to protect Kherson as best they can from the human safari, from drones hunting humans. And Charkol would still be there, a part of that, assuming she's still in the fight. Here's a picture of one of the main landmarks in Mykolaiv. hopefully I'll go get to see that someday. Okay, so one onto the Human Relief Organization of the week. That will be, our organization is Blue Check Ukraine. Blue Check works in tandem with the Ukrainian Assistance Organization to get medical supplies and food and humanitarian aid to the front lines. You can see lots of pictures here of that going on. So what's interesting about them is their team was founded, and their board of directors includes Lev Schreiber. You may recognize him as the Sabretooth from the X-Men Wolverine movies. Maybe he'll get a chance to come back in Avengers and Doomsday. I don't think he will. He's a little bit busy trying to save Ukraine right now, but he is a pretty good actor. And these guys worked with several organizations, not just the Ukrainian Assistance Organization, but you'll see that they're a linchpin for all of these organizations in humanitarian aid that has been helping along the front lines in the towns. They can't quite get into Kherson, but they can get into Mykolaiv. I think I forgot to share this earlier. There's the chapel. Ukraine, as I noticed, has a lot of beautiful Orthodox chapels. So if you're a chapel tour person, you'll see all of those. But Blue Check, $5 or $10 to them will help. Their donate button right here. You can donate, and they have custom amounts. These are 50, 100, and 250. If you remember from what we talked about last week, $5 can get medication to a person for a whole month. So consider donating to Blue Check Ukraine. I'm going to put up a banner for that website for the rest of the presentation. There's a part of the 35th Marine fighting against drones. Hopefully we'll get to hear what happened to charcoal in the future. As Tigger says, there's all kinds of heroic stories we've never even heard of that we'll finally get to talk about and celebrate on Victory Day. One of the more tragic news out of Ukraine is that in Odessa, 9 people died as a result of flooding. So if it sounds familiar, where we just had something like this happen in Texas, I wanted us to feel kinship with the people. We have a town in Texas called Odessa, but that Odessa would never flood. But this Odessa is right on the ocean, and their sewer systems back up after having, the equivalent of a month of rain in one spot. A family of 5 died in the flash flooding, and 4 other people, including 1 child. Would this have been avoided, if there was no war going on? No. This is one of those things that a war-torn country can experience natural disasters at the same time. And so we, being a country that has had a lot of natural disasters lately, including flash floods like this, there's the Odessa blast, and there's where the flooding was. See that there was other pictures where when the water clears away, there's holes in the ground where their streets had sunk down. So while they're flooded, they're also being bombed, by the way, and power goes out. Not a good time. But when you have flooding here, you can imagine what it would be like to also have drones coming down on your head. So we need a no-fly zone, and I'm going to be pushing that just about every podcast for a while. Last week we watched Ben Cook and I commented on no zone, and we watched the old movie for you kids out there, Firefox with Clint Eastwood. That one's up on my YouTube channel on the Writing Ref is the reaction to that movie. Go check it out. Give us a like and subscribe. My little push there for the Writing Ref channel, but also there's a really good podcast about how we get Russia back into the cultural zeitgeist as an enemy again, because that the Cold War was more than just a war of the threat of mutual annihilation, but it was also understanding the real threats that we posed to each other so that we respected them, so that when things like the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, there was a way out. But also during that time period, if you'd had this sort of an incursion from East Germany into West Germany that you're having with flyovers that are approaching Poland and approaching Estonia and breaching Estonian airspace. And now there was an incident where they approached Lithuanian airspace and were driven back before they broke the line. Because what has happened is NATO has threatened to shoot down any more planes that breach the area. I'm going to borrow a little bit from an animation from the military channel, because I want to show you a good graphic that I don't have the skills to make yet. One thing that has happened is that the Ukraine is going to be getting the Gripen from Sweden, and we'll talk about why that's important in just a moment. But here you have a recreation of the different various events. This is the MiG-31 approaching and breaking Estonian airspace. Now, originally, what you had was just 3 MiGs breaching Estonian airspace. This time, there were 3 more MiG-31s, but also Su-30 and Su-35. Why is that important? So let me pull up a picture of the good old MiG-31. There's the MiG-31, right? We watched that last week. It's kind of based on the SR-71 Blackbird, and then they put some 2 fins on it and some canards. What you'll see is kind of funny is the Gripen has canards. That is not the MiG-31. The MiG-31 looks a little bit more like this guy. So what's so special about that? It's just a souped up MiG-25, right? Well, imagine going Mach 2, Mach 2.5. I wanted to come up with some kind of distance calculator at how far an aircraft can penetrate when they're at 50,000 feet or above, going Mach 2, and then able to shoot a hypersonic missile. But the way this has to be intercepted is you've already got to have aircraft in the air. This thing goes so high and fast that if you do not already have aircraft in the air, by the time they take off, you've got to have aircraft in the air for your guys to take off. You'll never make the intercept before they can launch ordnance. Now, the reason they would now test putting a Su-35 and Su-30 with them is for electronic warfare. Their intent isn't to breach here like they breached in Estonia, but they want to see if the proper reaction happens in Lithuania. And the proper reaction is to launch when the MiG-31 takes off and even starts to head your way. But what they do with the Su-30 and Su-35 is to first see if radar concentrates on the Su-30. And then they use the Su-35, which is a 2-seat variant of the Su series, basically. And it has the biggest and robust electronic attack package. So then they're first seeing if the radars of Lithuania, Estonia, and NATO will concentrate on the Su-30 instead. Then they use the Su-35 to jam and see if they can get these 3 MiG-31s closer to the border of Lithuania. Remember, they don't have to breach a Lithuanian airspace to be able to fire at deeper into Europe. But it's very, very fast. So they're testing. They can get through Moldova here. Nobody cares about that. They go right into Estonia, Lithuania. They want to see if they can fire into the Balkans. They want to see if they can fire deeper into the heart of Europe, into Poland, into Germany. And they're testing NATO's resolve and NATO's response. NATO has discussed doing a Western no-fly zone. Finally, just talked about it. And they say we're going to do it. But yeah, we did talk about it. That's what the NATO webpage says. And these kind of probing attacks are just going to keep going. And in addition to over September or October 1st and October 2nd, you had yet another big drone campaign all across Ukraine. Kherson itself was hit hard by more of the Shahed type drones. So how do you stop this? You got to have one way is this has definitely pushed Sweden to go ahead and pull the trigger on giving the Gripen, the JAS-39 Gripen. There's a pretty good picture of a Gripen. Now, you notice the Gripen has these canards. It's meant to be a dogfighter. It's meant to be a multi-role fighter. It does not have thrust vectoring, but it can hold just about any weapon in the NATO arsenal, to include those Israeli missiles that I was talking about last week with Ben Cook, the Python. So it is very versatile on what it can fire. It's very versatile in terms. The only thing it's not as good at is being as stealthy as the F-35, but it does everything else the F-35 can do, and probably better. It can turn better, it can fight better, it can intercept better, it can get higher, faster. Ukraine is going to be doing very well with this aircraft, but again, they will have to train on it. They're all trained up and ready to go on the Viper and the F-16 and the Mirage 2000. Some of those pilots will be able to hop from those jets into this one very easily. But this is what chased the MiG-31s away from Lithuania. You had a few Hungarian Gripens that came in and very quickly got into the air, very quickly got to altitude so that they could make the intercept. And their anti-electronic warfare package was able to deal with the Su-35, whereas a lot of other aircraft rising to intercept MiG-31s and these probing runs is not going to be very good. Some other assets that may be in danger back in the farther reaches of the NATO countries could include AWACSs. And the MiG-31 is also a very big danger to tankers. So if you're trying to enforce a no-fly zone, which Russia is showing they're afraid of, no-fly zones require tankers. So having MiG-31s or having Gripens in theater to get high and fast enough to deal with high, fast flyers, I'm really not sure if the F-35 can do it. But the F-22, the F-15 already has to be on station. The F-22 can get high fast and intercept a high fast flyer, but we're not giving Ukraine F-22s. So this is the next best thing. This thing's climb rate will get there to make the intercept within an appropriate amount of time. So that was a good response. Give Ukraine some Gripens. How many Gripens and of what variation, we don't know. But one of the other things we're talking about doing for Ukraine is for Ukraine to keep open a safe passage corridor. Now, what's a safe passage corridor? I wonder if I can bring up a map of Ukraine here. Well, I know I can. I just want to bring one up that'll be of use. And how good this plane would be at getting high, getting to altitude fast. Its climb rate with those canards is very, very important to intercepting the MiG-31, which is going to come at you, again, above 50,000 feet at about Mach 2. Maybe next podcast I'll have the calculations on how much ground an aircraft can cover with those parameters, but it's very quickly that it happens. All right. So, again, this whole country is about the size of Iraq, a little bit bigger than the state of Texas. It is. Anyway, a safe passage corridor. What is that? So you'd have let's imagine a line from Lviv to Odessa here. And the safe passage corridor, I think with the drone warfare, you'd have to make a lot of it secret and known only to pilots and air defense artillery. But what you would do is you would open a corridor of airspace across Ukraine like this. And what it would do is NATO planes could fly in from Poland and go right down this corridor. And the reason they do that is if they get MiG-31s taking off from Belarus or Russia, and they get indications of that, then instead of hanging out waiting back here in Poland for drones or in particular drones is why you would do this. Because you'd have what Russia's been doing is sending the slow-moving drones over Western Ukraine, and then they make a hard right turn and go into Poland. So mostly you would do this corridor to protect. You'd want to protect Romania with it too. But you'd have the Gripens inside Ukraine protecting from high fast flyers taking off from Russia. You'd have more Gripens in Poland and coming in from Switzerland and Hungary. If you have F-16s, F-35s already in the air, they can also intercept the high fast flyers. But they got, again, the Gripen's the only one that I'm thinking of, short of the F-22, that'll have the climb rate to do it. If Fat Amy can climb high enough, fast enough from takeoff to intercept a high fast flyer, somebody let me know, please. I'd love to hear in the comments. We don't have anybody chatting with me, do we? Fat Amy is what pilots call. Nobody in. Fat Amy is what pilots call the F-35. It's a lovely name, but it's named after the girl in Pitch Perfect. So, she's fat, but she's sexy. So Fat Amy. Anyway, corridor so that what you do is planes launch from Russia. It might be a threat. you launch, you do, and you have drones that might be a threat. You have NATO planes overfly this corridor. It's not a no-fly zone. They're not enforcing anything, but the second those drones turn towards Poland, you already have NATO jets here to pounce on them. That's the idea. Sounds pretty good to me. Instead of talking about it, let's do it. Any more questions for next time? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk more female snipers. There are two other pretty famous ones. One of them basically has done a lot of work being an ambassador on Instagram. But there are two other famous female snipers now in Ukraine whose stories are more active than Charcoal's. But we went over the Hero of the Week Charcoal today. We went over the Blue Check organization run by hopefully one of your Hollywood favorites. But the reason I bring him up is anytime I can forge a connection between these organizations and how our two countries have a relationship, the better. So Blue Check hopefully helps demonstrate that. The tragedy of facing a natural disaster during the war, we talked about that. We want to pray for that family and for the other victims lost in that flash flooding. And we hope that everyone stays safe from any more terrorizing bombings or human safari. And with that, we'll say glory to those who protect the Constitution of the United States of America. Slava Ukraini and Heroyam Slava. We'll see you next time.